Hello and welcome. My name's Colleen Fritsch. I'm from Minnesota and I've been a dementia champion for several years. My goal today is to just simply run through a typical Dementia Friends session that I would give, and then at the end maybe answer a few questions and give you a few tips on things that I have found successful and maybe a few snags that I've run into, and hopefully you'll find this useful. I'd like to thank the National Association of Area Agencies on Aging and Home Instead Senior Care for making this all possible. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. My name is Colleen Fritsch, and I'm a Dementia Friends champion, and I've been leading Dementia Friends sessions in my community and with my coworkers for over 4 years. It's been important work and very rewarding, and I'm very pleased to bring Dementia Friends to you this morning. During this session, it'll last just about 60 minutes. We'll go through a basic understanding of what dementia is and what it is not. We'll go through the 5 key messages of Dementia Friends. And then at the end, I will ask you if you'd be willing to take an action step, a small or a large action step, to join me in becoming a Dementia Friend. So just one word, this Dementia Friends is for community members. How do we, as friends and families and grocery store clerks, understand and support a person living with dementia? This is not designed for primary caregivers. Their needs and their expectations are a whole lot deeper than what we're going to talk about today, although primary caregivers have told me they've learned some important tips during this. So just with that caveat, let's start with a little interaction from you. Could I ask 3 of you to share with me, please, one word that comes to mind when you hear the term dementia?
Memory.
Memory.
Confusion.
Confusion. Fear. Those are not unusual terms for me to hear when I ask that question. There's a whole lot of negative stereotype around a person living with dementia. And hopefully today we can begin to tear away that stereotype and give you a fresh look at what it is like for the person living with dementia. So to begin with, let's get the big question out of the way, the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's. Dementia is an umbrella term that describes 20 to 30 different forms of diseases of the brain. Of those 20 to 30 diseases of the brain, Alzheimer's is the most common. In fact, 40 to 60% of all dementias are Alzheimer's. And so that's why we use the terms kind of interchangeably, because so much of the dementia is Alzheimer's. But there is frontal temporal dementia, there is dementia with Lewy bodies, there's vascular dementia, and a whole bunch of other dementias as well. And the difference is the area of the brain that is first affected by the disease, but then it does, once it begins, cascade through all of the outer areas of the brain. All right, so I better say a word or two about what is Dementia Friends. Dementia Friends was started in the United Kingdom. In fact, they now have several million Dementia Friends throughout the United Kingdom. But it has now become an international movement of people wanting to understand dementia and the people living with dementia. In the United States right now, there are currently 20 states that are working on becoming dementia-friendly states. And I'm proud to be from Minnesota, which is one of those states. We have about 300 dementia champions like myself in Minnesota and over 16,000 dementia friends in Minnesota. And for people that just go out and talk to community members, that's pretty powerful to know we're achieving those kinds of numbers. So let's begin. We all know that things change as we age, right? We maybe have a change in hair color, a little bit more silver in our hair. We maybe find it a little harder to get up out of a chair after we've gone for a long walk. Our vision changes. We may have glaucoma or maybe even macular degeneration. And believe it or not, our brains change as we age too. If you haven't heard the term, let me tell you the term. It's called normal cognitive decline. And it begins when you're about age 40. So then how do you know the difference between normal cognitive decline and what may or may not be an early sign of Alzheimer's or dementia? So we're going to go through the top 10 early signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's or dementia. And I'm on page 2 of your workbook. The first sign is memory loss that disrupts daily life. Now, if you think about it, you forgot things when you were 10. You forgot things when you were 30, and that doesn't change. But forgetting is not memory loss. Especially new things, a person with Alzheimer's or dementia will forget new information. So if you give them a new microwave, you may have to explain to them again and again and again how to warm up their cup of coffee, right? That's because that new information is not sitting in their brain anymore. On the other hand, you and I may periodically look at the remote control and go, which button do I press? But we can figure it out. A person with Alzheimer's or dementia loses that ability to figure it out. The second challenge is in problem solving and planning. So one of the areas of the brain that's affected is this frontal temporal part, and that's where it goes first step 1, then step 2, then step 3, step 4, right? So I want to go for a walk in the park. It's a lovely day. I'm going to go for a walk in the park. Never mind that I'm still in my house coat and slippers, right? Because I've lost that ability to say, first I need to do this, then I need to do that. Now, you and I may periodically have trouble balancing our checkbook. But again, we can figure that out. But for a person with Alzheimer's or dementia, that kind of logical, sequential thinking is disrupted by this disease. The third sign is difficulty completing familiar tasks at home, at work, or at leisure. So maybe they've got a buttermilk muffin recipe that they've been making since they were 10 years old and their grandmother taught them to them. And suddenly, it's gone. They've been doing it for years and years and years, but now it's gone. Now, you and I may forget a recipe, but eventually we're going to look at the ingredients and go, oh, that's right, it's baking soda, not baking powder. I got this. I'm good now. But for a person with Alzheimer's or dementia, poof, it's gone. And can you imagine how disruptive that is? The fourth sign is confusion with time or place. Sometimes I don't know a Tuesday from a Wednesday, right? They all look alike at some point. But I can figure it out. That's right. I took my granddaughter to dance practice last night, and that's on Tuesday, so today must be a Wednesday. But for a person with Alzheimer's or dementia, that whole sense of rhythm of day, of time, and place gets totally disrupted, and they're not able to get back into the swim. So they may need to have a big whiteboard calendar on which the days of the month are set out and you cross them off as you go through, just to help them get that sense of the days of the week. The fifth sign, this one I had no idea, was trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. Whoa, a person with Alzheimer's or dementia can lose their sense of depth of field. So if you walk into my home, I have these lovely honey oak floors, and in the middle of my living room is a beautiful dark rug, right? A person with Alzheimer's or dementia walking into my home is going to go, and that looks like a black hole to them. They don't want to walk in that. But now that I know that, if someone walks into my home, I don't know whether they have Alzheimer's or dementia or not, but when I welcome them into my home, I stand on that black rug, so they know it's a safe place for them to come and be. Similarly, if you come and have coffee at my house, and I have a white table with a white plate and the silverware there, a person with Alzheimer's or dementia might just sit there. They don't want to look stupid, but they can't tell where the plate ends and the table begins. But now that we know that, put a lovely little blue placemat there, and we're good, right? Dementia Friends is that kind of simple actions we can take to make people living with dementia feel more comfortable. The sixth sign is new problems with words in speaking and in writing. And that, again, is this part of the brain that is affected by the disease. And they may... Hand clock. Now, they know they haven't got it right, but they're trying their best to communicate with you. Anybody not know what I was saying? Yeah. It's just that simple to say, oh, yeah, it's about 10 o'clock now. We'll be leaving in about 20 minutes, right? Or, could I have that liquid pencil thing? the most difficult is sometimes they'll go, that thing that goes around. And it's hard to guess that maybe they're talking about going for a ride in the car, or they're talking about the clock and the hands that go round and round. But some simple guesses can help you fill in the words for them. The seventh sign is misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace your steps. When I get up in the morning, my morning goes like this. I get out of bed, I go in and brush my teeth, I go make the coffee, take my vitamins, go in and take my shower, feed the cats, go grab my coffee, go turn on my curling iron, and at some point in the morning I sit down and I watch the news, right? And I reach over, there's my coffee, and there's the news guy, and I'm good. And if some morning I get up and I reach over and my coffee's not there, well, I know I made the coffee, and I took the shower, I remember I poured the coffee, then I turned the curling iron on. Oh, that's right, the cats were making that funny noise. I know where my coffee cup is. It's on the counter in the bathroom where I left it, right? But for a person with Alzheimer's or dementia, they're being told they're wrong all the time. They're always being helped and corrected, and they don't know much for sure. But one thing they know is that when I sit down in my chair and I reach over, I'm going to have my cup of coffee, right? And if that coffee's not there, what are they going to do? Why did you steal my coffee? I need my coffee cup. Now, if this is a neighbor that's just come over to have a cup of coffee with Colleen because, hey, she's been a little difficult lately, my neighbor's going to go, wait a minute, I didn't steal your coffee cup. I've never stolen anything in my life. Nobody's ever accused me of stealing. Excuse me, right? But if my neighbor has been to Dementia Friends and gets it that I cannot imagine where my coffee cup is, so it must be your fault, what's my neighbor going to say? Oh, Colleen, I saw it when I came in. I know when I came in the kitchen door, I don't remember where I saw it, I'm sorry, but let me just go retrace my steps. And scanning around can go find my coffee cup on my bathroom counter and bring it to me, right? Again, just a little understanding helps a great deal. The eighth sign is decreased or poor judgment. Kind of like that, it's a lovely day, let me go for a walk in the park, but it becomes more difficult. A person with Alzheimer's or dementia may be far more susceptible to fraud. So a person with Alzheimer's or dementia being told they're wrong all the time, right? Corrected all the time. And then someone calls and befriends them on the phone and says, you know, Tony, if you send me just $2,000, I can send you your jackpot winning of $150,000. And boy, won't you be, well, who wouldn't do that, right? The ninth sign is withdrawal from work or social activities. We all have days when we just don't feel like putting ourselves out there. But for a person with Alzheimer's or dementia, maybe they're tired and confused and they just can't keep up, and so they just want to stay home. But now that we know that, we can just be their friend. Talk with them in a quiet environment, stay connected with them, right? And the final sign is changes in mood or personality. We all get a little grumpy. Well, I should speak for myself. I get a little grumpy sometimes. But for a person with Alzheimer's or dementia, maybe they feel a little disrespected. Maybe they remember there was a time when they were honored, when people sought out their advice, and they're not feeling that anymore. And so they might get a little grumpy. Or worse yet, if I cannot tell you that it hurts for me to put my arms over my heads, and you're trying to help me get dressed or put my coat on, I might very well just push you away because it hurts, and I don't have the words for it hurts. All right, so that's the 10 early signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's or dementia. I've been doing enough talking. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do some work. So in your workbook on page 3 is the exercise we call broken sentences. There are 5 starts to sentences in column 1, and the finishing sentences are in column 2. I'm going to give you just a few minutes to draw a line connecting the first part of the sentence with the second part of the sentence. All right, so I see most of you are finished. Why don't we do it this way? I'll read the first half of the sentence to you, and then we'll all read the second half of the sentence together. Fair enough? All right. Dementia is not a normal part of aging. Correct. Now, it is true that getting older is one of the key determining factors in a person being diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia. But 1 in 3 people over the age of 65 will someday develop dementia. That means that 2 out of 3 will not. And I want to say it's important to get a diagnosis, because sometimes as we get older, we're taking more and more pharmaceuticals, and sometimes they can interact with each other and mimic the signs of dementia. So if you know someone who's concerned, the first step is a diagnosis before you begin all of the worry. All right, that was our first key message of the 5 key messages, and our second key message is dementia is caused by diseases of the brain. Thank you. So, as we said earlier, dementia is an umbrella term for 20 to 30 different kinds of diseases of the brain, the most common of which is Alzheimer's. Our third key message: dementia is not just about having memory problems, right? And so we've talked about some of that. It's vision problems, it's sequencing problems. There are a whole lot of other parts of the brain, it's finding the right word, issues in the brain. The fourth key message: it is possible to have a good quality of life with dementia, and may that be our anthem for dementia friends. If we as community members understand, support, and stay connected with people with dementia, we can have a truly positive impact on the quality of their life. And then the fifth key message: there's more to the person than the dementia. Someone with high blood pressure or diabetes or even cancer than that diagnosis. The person living with dementia is still a person who happens to be living with dementia. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how dementia affects planning and how it affects communication. But before we do, I want to spend just a couple of minutes on memory and what is affected and what is not affected. And you have in front of you in your workbook the bookcase story. But if you will, I'd like to demonstrate the bookcase story for you. Imagine that I am a 70-year-old woman, and standing next to me is the bookcase that is my life. And on the top 3 shelves of my bookcase are all the facts of my life. How I got to this session today, what I wore, my husband's name, my husband's birth date, my grandchildren's name, my son-in-law's names, their anniversary, all of those facts and details. The password to every shopping site I've ever visited. They're all stored up here, perfectly aligned in exact chronological order on the top 3 shelves that is my bookcase, just like all of those facts are aligned in the outer part of our brains. And down here on of my bookcase, those are what I stand for, what I won't stand for. That's where I store my feelings and the feelings that I get from other people. That's down here on those bottom 3 shelves. How I can decode a friendly face, a warm touch, a tone of voice. That's all right down there on the bottom 3 shelves of my bookcase. And now dementia comes, and it rocks my bookcase. And look what's happening to those top 3 shelves. Things are flying off. They're just flying off those top 3 shelves. And even if my bookcase could bend down and pick up that memory and put it right exactly where that factoid belongs, guess what? Dementia's still rocking my bookcase. But look at those bottom 3 shelves. They're sloshing back and forth a bit. They're getting a little riled up. But those are among the very last things a person with Alzheimer's or dementia will lose. That's a gift that informs how you and I can interact with a person with dementia. So let's say my friend Deanna from New York has come back for our 50th class reunion. And she's heard that Colleen has stopped showing up for events, and she hasn't been working on the reunion planning committee, and But you know, Deanna and Colleen were besties. So she comes over to visit Colleen and she said, Colleen, I've missed you. I can't wait to tell you about my husband, Peter. You know he's going to retire. And our daughters, Katie and Megan, they're married and have grandchildren. And Colleen said, who are you? Oh, come on. I'm Deanna. I got to tell you, my daughter was an Olympic swimmer in the Olympics just 4 years ago. It was, I don't know you. Oh, Colleen, you were always a drama queen. Really? You're not that special, Colleen. Come on, come on. I don't know you. Now, I have good news for you. Later that day, Colleen will probably not remember some lady named Deanna was there telling her about people she's never met. That's going to fly right off her bookshelf. But she is going to remember the anger, the frustration, the feeling of not being enough. That's going to linger with her. Now, Deanna's in New York, and New York is a Dementia Friends state, and Deanna's been to Dementia Friends, and she starts with, Colleen, I'm so excited to see you. I can't wait to tell you about Peter and the girls. And Colleen says, do I know you? And Deanna goes, boom. Oh, Colleen, you and I were best friends in high school. We used to hang out at the bowling alley, and on weekends we'd work in my dad's garden. You know what I was thinking, Colleen? Maybe we could go have lunch at the bowling alley and then maybe go to a garden shop and just kind of spend the day together. Bad news. Later that day, Colleen may not remember the bowling alley, and she may not remember the walking in the garden shop, but she's going to know it was a good day. She was connected, she was cared for, and someone cared about her. All right, that's how I explain memory loss as it applies to dementia and Alzheimer's. Let's talk a little bit about planning. And I'm going to put you to work once again. Let's take a simple everyday task and figure out how simple it is. So I'm on page 5 in your workbook, and you see that big blank space. Let's pretend you need to buy a dozen eggs. And I'm going to give you step 1 for buying a dozen eggs. You are in the grocery store. So you don't have to worry about how you drive from your home. You don't have to worry about parking. You're in the grocery store. And you're going to buy a dozen eggs. And your last step is you're going to leave the grocery store. All right? So if you will just, and you can work together as teams. We've got 3 people here and 3 people here. You can work together on this. And just write down all the steps it takes to buy a dozen eggs at the grocery store. I'll give you a few minutes to do that, to work on that together. All right, so we've got 2 note takers going here. Let's see how we did. Team 1, how many steps did you come up with?
18.
18. And this team?
We kept coming up with them. So, I mean, I shortened it to 7, but it ended up being more like 13 to 15.
Okay, so team 1, could I ask you please to slowly read your list?
First, you have to get a basket.
Get a basket.
Then you have to find the refrigerator section.
Find the refrigerator section.
And you have to walk there.
Oh, good point. Walk to the refrigerator section.
Then you have to find the appropriate aisle in the refrigerator section where the eggs are.
Find the right aisle in that section.
Then you have to look for the eggs on the correct shelf.
Find the right shelf to find your eggs.
Grab your eggs. Put
Grab
them in
the eggs,
basket
put them in the basket
without breaking them.
without breaking them.
Then you have to find your way to the register.
Could I just stop you for a minute? Team 2, what step did she miss?
Checking the eggs for cracks.
Nice. This team was going to open the eggs, check for cracks, and put them together. Go right ahead with your list.
Okay. Find your way to the register. Put the eggs on the counter. Wait for the total. Figure out what kind of money, how you're going to pay for it. Get that out, whether credit, cash. Get your change, count your change. Get a receipt. Get your bag. Pick it up, find the door, and leave.
Nice. Nice. Couple of quick questions. First of all, it was interesting that you said either pay with cash or credit card, so writing a check wasn't even an option, which is probably true unless you're an older person. But go, nice job, Team 2. But then, what about pay with cash? Doesn't that mean you get your wallet out of your pocket, you open your wallet, you take the money out, you hand it to the cashier says, here's your change, you put your change back in your wallet, you close your wallet, you put it back in your pocket. And that's the easy step. This team was going, what if you pay with a debit card? How do you know whether you're supposed to slide or if it's got a chip reader? How do you know what your PIN number is, for heaven's sakes? How do you know if you want cash back and how much cash back? And heaven forbid you're going to write a check, because now filling out the whole check thing and the whole check register and all of the steps involved in that. All right, and then you left the grocery store. So you had how many steps?
Around 17, 18.
And probably with those added steps, maybe 20, 21, 22. So what do you think of this easy, everyday task? So if you're a person who has problems doing step 1, step 2, step 3, how are you doing? Not gonna, might need a little help. And I don't mean we should go grocery shopping for a person with Alzheimer's or dementia, but now that we understand they might get stuck on a step and not know what to do next, we can just, if you're a clerk or if you see someone in a grocery store who's confused, we can just say, can I help you, right? All right, the last area we want to talk about is, now that we know what we know, how do we communicate effectively with a person living with Alzheimer's or dementia? And that communication is total bottom shelf stuff. A person living with Alzheimer's or dementia, just like you or I, still wants to be heard, accepted, understood. That's all bottom shelf stuff. But they have some challenges. The one is losing the words, and we need to fill in the words for them. When a person with Alzheimer's or dementia forgets the word, oh, you mean watch. Don't do that. They're trying their best to communicate, and they just did. You knew what they were talking about, right? Oh, sure, it's 10:20 now. We're leaving in about half an hour. That's good. It was a win for them. Another problem that they might have is losing their train of thought. Oh, I was going to the store the other day. We had such lovely weather. I was so... Oh, I'm glad you got to the store. Were you able to find what you wanted? And just help them get back on track. And if they can't get back on track, then move on. You're still hearing them on their bottom shelf, right? Having difficulty words organizing right way might problem be for a person dementia living with. But did anybody not understand what I said? So if a person living with Alzheimer's or dementia gets their words in the wrong order, that's because they're taking them as they come to them, as they're trying to stay connected to you. And if you got it, you got it. And if you didn't quite follow along, oh, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Could you say that again? And take the responsibility for the miscommunication on yourself. And probably the most difficult problem that they have communicating with us is that sometimes they revert to their birth language. So my mom was a first-generation immigrant from Germany, and my father was a first-generation immigrant from Sweden. And had either of them had dementia, they may eventually revert to speaking German or Swedish. And that would be a problem for those of us who loved them, who didn't understand those words. And so perhaps you bring in a grandchild who was fluent in that language or who was studying that language, or someone from the local university who was studying that language, just to help with the first key phrases. Keep in mind that they can still hear us in English, because that's still in there. It's just that when they try and use words, they're going to come out in that other language. And so you might need help understanding the key words of that language if you didn't also grow up with them at the time. All right, so now let's get to communication tips for you and for me. First of all, treat the person with dignity and respect. And that goes right back to they're a person first. The disease does not define them. And so they still deserve the dignity and respect that they have earned by living their life fully for as many years as they lived their life. So a friend of mine went to visit her grandmother and grandfather one day, and her grandmother was having what she called a difficult day. She wasn't able to track the conversation, and so my friend Rachel and her grandfather decided they'd do Grandma a favor and they'd just talk to each other. And if she wanted to chime in, she could, but we didn't want to make eye contact with her and have her feel bad that she was confused. And so chime in she surely did. She got up from the table and said, "I'm leaving. You guys are leaving me out." And they were. They just were doing it for all of the best of intention. A person with Alzheimer's or dementia still understands when they're being respected and when they're being taken for granted. Number 2, be aware of your feelings. And that may sound a little strange, but specifically, be aware of how your feelings translate in your tone of voice. So my neighbor Colleen has Alzheimer's, and her husband Bill is having a difficult time. She is wearing him out. And so I'm a neighbor, and I know Colleen's got a hairdresser appointment for this afternoon. I'm gonna be helpful, and I'm gonna go take Colleen to the hairdresser. So I tell Bill he can go get away for a while, spend some time, maybe get his own haircut, maybe just go for a walk. I've got Colleen handled. And I go over and I notice that Bill hasn't had time yet this morning to do the dishes. And so we've got some time. I'm gonna do the dishes before we go, just help Bill out a little bit more. And Colleen comes out and said, I have to go to the hairdresser. Yeah, I know, we'll leave in about 15 minutes. And I continue doing the dishes. I can't be late for my hairdresser. I know, we'll leave in about 15 minutes. My hairdressers are very busy. I know, we'll leave in about 15 minutes. Now, anybody not get it that I was getting a little frustrated? And what's happening with Colleen? The whole, we've got it covered, we're leaving in 15 minutes is flying right off that top shelf. But what does she now know? I'm concerned about my hairdresser appointment, and there's that angry lady out there that just doesn't understand me, and I'm not gonna get to my hairdresser appointment, right? But now that the neighbor's the dementia friend, she's gonna go, I know, we'll leave in about 15 minutes. I was gonna do up these dishes, you wanna help me? My hairdresser's very busy. All right, why don't I leave these? Why don't you and I head out now for your hairdresser's appointment? I can take care of these later when I get back, right? Because we understand we're talking to Colleen's bottom shelf here. All right, number 3, be patient and supportive. And here was another aha moment for me. Do you know that a person living with Alzheimer's or dementia can take up to 20 seconds to hear, process, and respond to even the most simple question? For instance,
Colleen, how was your trip to Omaha?
it only took 6 hours. It was amazing. That was 20 seconds. How'd that feel? Yeah, agonizing. Was anybody tempted to help out? Go, did you come down I-80? Did you take 35? Was there lots of construction? But guess what you're doing when you're helping out? Yeah, you're adding more for them to want to respond to, and they're still working on number 1, and now they lost number 1, and now they're, what are you saying to me now? And it just gets more and more confusing. But now that you know about the 20 seconds, you can give me 20 seconds all day long, can't you? Now that you understand I need that, yes.
Do they understand that spatial difference like we do?
No.
In their mind, it's not 20 seconds.
In their mind, yeah, that whole case, her question was, do they understand the 20 seconds and how long that is? Not at all. That whole sense of time is just jello for them. And they don't see any rhythm or meter to it whatsoever. But what they, so we'll go on to the next tip. which is offer comfort and reassurance. So when you're giving someone 20 seconds, it's not helpful to do this and stamp your foot, right? Because they get your body language. But if you can just knowing that a gentle hand, a smile on your face, that will communicate that this 20 seconds is going by in no time for me, right? It's not a problem. What's we're working on is you and I connecting with each other, and that's what's important. All right, number 5, avoid criticizing or correcting. A person with Alzheimer's or dementia is being told they're wrong all the time. And if it's a matter of their personal safety or the safety of others around them, of course intervene. But the rest of the time, if we can say, sure. Our friend Jimmy was so proud of the fact that he served in World War I, that he joined the Navy when he was 16 years old. I mean, this was bottom shelf stuff for him, that he supported this country in a time of crisis. Did it matter that it was World War II? No, that wasn't what he was telling. He wasn't giving us a history lesson. He was talking about who he is and who he has always been. Avoid arguing. If you look at that brain image on the bottom of page 3, I promise you that when you're trying to connect with a person with Alzheimer's or dementia, you don't have enough words to fill those cavities in the brain to help them understand your perspective. The best you can do is join them in their perspective, meet them in their bottom shelf, and have a relationship and a conversation with them there. Offer a guess. If they do that thing that goes around and around, offer a guess. Oh, I'm sorry, Colleen, I'm just having a bad day. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Could you tell me more? Encourage nonverbal communication. Can you point to it? Can you point to it? Take me there. Take me there. And then during the conversation, person with Alzheimer's or dementia loses their peripheral vision. And eventually their vision becomes this. So whenever possible, approach the person from the front, because otherwise you might startle them, right? Approach slowly so they've got time to process that someone's coming at them and that it's someone with a smile on their face and someone who looks like a friend, right? Call the person by their preferred name. Why? So that they know you know them. So Georgine, it's so good to see you today, right? Or, oh, Grandma, it's your granddaughter, Rachel. I'm so glad to see you, Grandma Lois. Isn't that nice? And now I've established that we have a relationship, that I know her, and I have reminded her of my name. Right? There's nothing more difficult than, oh, look, Grandma, do you know who this is? No, she doesn't. But if you can just provide that name and that link, it makes it so much easier and takes down that performance barrier. Oh no, I'm going to screw up again. Speak slowly and clearly and use a gentle and relaxed tone, and then patiently wait for a response. Supportively wait for a response. During the conversation, try not to ask questions, but provide a statement. Oh, and the bathroom is right there. Try not to use pronouns. Oh, it's right over there. Well, the person with Alzheimer's or dementia may have already forgotten the question and not know what it is, and certainly doesn't know what there is. Pronouns are bedeviling to people with Alzheimer's or dementia. But if you can say, the umbrella is by the door, we'll grab it on our way out, great, I've got it. Don't start a conversation with, do you remember when? No, they don't. But if you can start the conversation with, I was thinking about when I used to go visit my Aunt Myrtle. Ah, the favorite part was she had potatoes planted, and I loved digging in the dirt to dig up those potatoes, and that smell of the dirt, it was so good. And if the person with Alzheimer's or dementia goes, yeah, but she had a really mean bull, I was afraid of that bull, that's terrific. They're joining you in that. But if not, you're still sharing yourself with them, and that is so empowering to them. And then use written notes or give visual cues. So a written note, even on the back door that says, love you, Susan, or on the microwave that says, reheat coffee for a minute and 30 seconds in the microwave, just not only gives them the information they need, but says, I'm here for you. I'm supportive. It's okay. We're in this together. All right. So we're coming to the end, and I want to review those 5 key messages and then give you an opportunity to consider an action step. So the first key message is that dementia is not a normal part of aging. Dementia is caused by diseases of the brain. Dementia is not just about memory problems. It affects 9 areas of the brain during the progression of the disease. It is possible to have a good quality of life with dementia, and you and I have the opportunity to be part of making that happen. And there's more to a person than the dementia. So in front of you, you all have an action slip. And it suggests some actions that you might want to take as a dementia friend, or it gives you room to write your own action that you want to take as a dementia friend. I invite you to look those over. Maybe you want to stay connected with someone you know has dementia. Maybe you want to talk to your friends about what you learned today and help them understand the disease. Maybe you want to simply change your terminology from someone suffering from dementia to someone living with dementia. Whatever your action is, large or small, that's just fine. But if you will, I will then take your action slips from you and return, give you a Dementia Friend button as you join me in becoming one of Dementia Friend USA's Dementia Friends. Thank you so much for your time. My advice for new champions as they prepare for their first section is to first, if you can, shadow another champion who is giving a Dementia Friend session, or better yet, co-present with someone. I have found co-presenting to be a lot of fun and more interactive for the audience as well. My other piece of advice is to just stand or sit in front of the audience. Don't use a lectern or a table. That just kind of seems to take the energy out of the presentation. And then my last piece of advice is be true to the champion's guide. I know that thing is big and it can seem intimidating, but it really does walk you through the Dementia Friends session, and it gives you really good tips as you go along. During the actual Dementia Friends session, I have a few tips. I've already said stay true to the content, but then understand where you can interpret and where you can extrapolate. So as you go through the Champion's Guide, when you get to the session itself, the words that are in bold are the words you need to say, that all champions say, so that every dementia friend from whatever state is learning the same key messages. But having said that, then how you explain that, my example of the missing coffee cup, or my example of my friend coming home from college, you can change that and explain that in words that make sense to you. In addition, keep in mind your audience. You might want to, if you're presenting, for instance, to a lawyer or to first responders, you might want to change some of the examples that would more fit some of their experiences. If you're speaking to older adults, you'll want to talk friend to friend because they're concerned about their friends and you're empowering them to help their friends. When I do the bookcase story, I kind of go off script. You might have noticed that. Time and time again, when I read the action slips at the end, people tell me that that bookcase story was a game changer. My advice to you is not to do it the way I do it, but to read it through and practice in front of a mirror so that it becomes a part of you and the way you tell the story. Don't skip over it. I went to a session where the dementia champion had people from the audience each read a different section, and that was interesting as well. But then spend some time explaining the top shelf and the bottom shelf, because that's crucial for how they interact from then on. And when I do the 20 seconds, all right, so this is the one time when I absolutely break the rules. It says in the manual that you should have a clock with you or a stopwatch and time the 20 seconds. I find that distracting, whether I'm co-presenting or I'm presenting on my own, if I'm counting the on a watch. So I just do 1001, 1002, 1003. Don't tell the people who wrote the manual that I don't follow the rules. And then my last piece of advice is about the action slips. I like collecting the action slips from people and saying, thank you, Mary. Thanks for becoming a dementia friend. I collect the action slips because they help remind me what motivated people and what resonated with people in my presentation. And that matters to me. During and after a Dementia Friends session, there are usually two types of questions that I get. The first is about research. Can you tell us, have they found the cause of dementia? How close are they to getting to finding a cure for dementia? I heard there's a link between MS and early onset dementia. And those are valid questions from people deeply concerned about the disease. And my response is that I have some resources that will help you with that. My focus has been on understanding the person with the dementia, not so much the disease. But I know there's amazing research going on and amazing progress being made. And I'd like to help connect you with the Alzheimer's Association. The other kind of interruption and question I get is someone who wants to tell their story. Oh, it was so sad, my family was torn apart. And those are people who want to be heard, but they can derail the presentation. So my response is generally, I am so sorry. You know, I'm going to stay around for like half an hour after this presentation. Perhaps you and I can talk one-on-one and go through some of the things that were happening on that time. And then I remember one time when a gentleman came up to me afterwards and he said, can you tell me, now that I know this, how do I tell my brother he's been doing it all wrong? That was probably the most frightening question I ever got. And so we talked, and it turns out his brother was trying to make his wife be all right and was correcting her and wanted her to have her hair just perfect because she had always had beautiful hair, and wanted her to sweep the floor perfectly because she had always kept a good house. And so I gave him some tips and said, you know, just go to your brother and say, boy, you've been doing great work. I've spent some time now learning a little bit more about people with Alzheimer's, and you have loved her so much. You know, one thing they suggested was, and just take one piece of advice, please don't tell your brother he's been doing it all wrong. After my presentations, I've had an opportunity to talk with people. Like I said, I generally plan on staying a half an hour at least after the presentation to answer questions and to talk with people. One woman came up to me and said, I just want you to know you're here tonight as an answer to my prayers, and I want to thank you for responding when God called you here today. Probably my most meaningful, well, there are lots of them, but I was shopping at a Target store last fall, and a man came up to me and said, you're the Dementia Friends lady, aren't you? And it turns out it was the same guy who wanted to tell his brother he was doing it all wrong. And he said, I just have to tell you, you changed everything. My sister-in-law was so angry, so cranky all the time before I went to Dementia Friends. Now we've stepped into her world, and we laugh, and we have joy, and we have such a good time together. When I walk in to visit her, she goes, there's my friend. And she's so excited to see me. You changed everything. And he pulled out his smartphone and he showed me a picture of he and his brother standing behind his sister-in-law in a wheelchair, and they were all smiling and waving, and it felt like they were waving right at me.